Well, this stuff from Lane, though, I mean, it makes me laugh. I find it funny. I think it's hilarious that Nick Saban had to address that his defensive coordinator is actually his defensive coordinator at a press conference yesterday. That cracks me up. I think it's funny. I think it's funny that he's like, "Hey, Nick, your guys were talking to my guys, brother. You better straighten your house out." That's funny to me. That cracks me up. This Taylor Swift thing is funny. The shot at A&M is the funniest, though. Calling Haynes King a completely different player after he transferred out of Texas A&M is hilarious and also true, but it's hilarious.
I mean, just out of nowhere. It's like he's just walking down the street, just bebopping along, and then boom, just jabs A&M. Just like
the difference
just past him on the sidewalk, just haymaker.
He beats Texas A&M.
It's true.
And so, Ole Miss fans like Lane Kiffin, and they should. They should, because he's a funny guy. He brings a lot of press to Ole Miss that it doesn't get organically because he's Lane Kiffin. And that's good. And he's winning football games, and it's a fun style of football. And it fits, right? It makes sense. And so they like all this stuff. I like it. It makes me laugh. But do all this and then lose to Alabama again. This Alabama. And I think it should. I shouldn't tell fans what to think or not. That's not my position. But doing all this again and then losing, especially if it's, multi-scored, would grow really thin on me if I were buying tickets, donating to NIL. Because November, Ole Miss was put through the ringer last year. And they gave him a raise up to $9 million. Remember that?
People were mad until about the start of spring ball.
Yeah. And the flirting with Auburn, how did fans respond to that? Oh, to heck with him. He sucks. No, it was, do you need money? Here's money. Money. The school gives him money, and millions go into the NIL fund. And so, Ole Miss is more invested in football than they ever have been. And never and ever are big words, but I don't think you'll ever have the resources into football that Alabama does. Expecting you to beat Alabama on an annual basis is a stupid expectation. It's not rooted in reality. There's a reason you don't do it very often. But this Alabama is a game that you get paid $9 million to win. This Alabama is a team that you beat with the millions of dollars that your fans raised for you this offseason to assemble a roster via transfer portal. This Alabama, losing to them by multiple scores after a week of trolling, not excusable the way it was in 2021. Because that was a Heisman Trophy winning Bryce Young-led Alabama team.
So, I agree with most of what you say. I do. And when you say this Alabama, right? I mean, that rings true. But you know what? Hey, Dad, you got some scar tissue? You got some scar tissue from Alabama and from LSU from through the years?
Oh, you meant like figurative scar tissue. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mean literal. That's none of my business. No, I'm talking about figurative.
Yeah.
I sat in Bryant-Denny Stadium in October of the year 2000, and Ole Miss rolled in 4-1, and Alabama rolled in 2-3, and Ole Miss was favored in the game. Pretty decent Ole Miss team. You had Romero Miller and Joe Gunn and Deuce McAllister and Tremaine Turner and Charles Stackhouse and Chris Collins and Toward Sanford and Grant Hurd.
Toward Sanford, wow.
Doug Ziegler. It's a pretty good Ole Miss roster. And Alabama won that game 45-7, and it wasn't that close. And if you go back and you look at the numbers from that game, you're like, I don't know why they won it 45-7. Andrew Zal was 18 of 22 for 261 yards, which was kind of a lot in the year 2000. He didn't have a single touchdown pass, and he was intercepted. They didn't have a 100-yard rusher in the game. Ahmad Galloway had 14 carries for 69 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Names.
Brandon Myree had 12 carries for 91 yards and a touchdown. And yet somehow Alabama won 45-7. I think that Alabama team finished 3-8. Is that right, hey Dad?
2000? Yep.
They went 3-8. Alabama did not win a game the rest of the season.
All right. My trump card.
There may be one player on Ole Miss's roster that was alive when that game was played.
Doesn't matter. We still have the scar. My turn to trump.
Yeah. No, I agree.
1998. Mississippi State 5-1. LSU 3-3. State heads down to Tiger Stadium. Big favorites. State loses 41-6. State in a few weeks would win the SEC West and go to Atlanta. LSU didn't win another game that year. They went 4-7. Yeah, there's some scar tissue with LSU and Alabama through the years.
And so, Borky, that's the only reason that I have, because I agree with you. There are a lot of years when you go into a game against an Alabama, against an LSU, against a Georgia recently, and you're like, I mean, the fan in me is like, yeah, I think we got a shot. But if I'm being honest with myself, I don't believe we got a shot. And then there's some years where you're like, I mean, this is a year where you can take advantage. And I've seen that scenario play out before and be like, how did that happen? What happened?
Yeah. And
but this is one of those
8 years ago today,
right?
This is one of those years.
8 years ago today, Ole Miss beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah. This
on
is
that
one
crazy pass.
This is one of those years. And I mean, if they go there and they play well and Milroe goes off and they just get beat, they just lose a really close game, okay. I'm not going to come back here on Monday and, Kiffin's a bum. Shouldn't have paid him what they paid him. Going to Tuscaloosa and playing well and losing in a very close game, even this Alabama is not something to turn your nose up at. But if it goes down like it did in 2021, and there are reckless decisions early in the game on fourth down where you're going for it from your own 19 or whatever it was in the first half of a game, where your defense is actually getting some stops, if it goes down like that and they get their faces beaten in,
that's where you've got a reason to be frustrated if it doesn't work out. Did you give yourself the best chance to win? If you gave yourself the best chance to win and played well and you lost, okay, then you just lost. You lost to a team that, as Lane Kiffin pointed out, has 18 5-stars on it, and we have one. His words. He said, Suntarine Perkins is the only player on our roster that Alabama wanted. It's kind of sobering.
And he's probably not wrong. Now,
probably
in hindsight, they would take 3 of Ole Miss's quarterbacks right now, but not at the time.
Sure. But, I mean, we talked about this in July. Ole Miss should like where they get Alabama on the schedule. I mean, you don't necessarily love opening conference play on the road in Tuscaloosa, but there was a chance. We talked about it this year. There's a chance that Alabama's still trying to kind of figure things out. New quarterback, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. Maybe they're still trying to kind of figure things out early on in the year. I would push back on this. Ben says Kiffin gave Saban unneeded ammunition and will wake up Alabama. Could be rough if Ole Miss is not ready. Come on, man. You don't believe that. You don't believe that. If you think Lane Kiffin making a comment in the media, kind of poking fun a little bit at Nick Saban, was the wake-up call that Alabama needed, you didn't watch him play last Saturday. If Alabama has a wake-up call, it's because of what happened in Tampa last week. And then the other possibility is maybe they're not that good this year. That's the other possibility. Sports Talk